Today, we will discuss the biography of John Donne. John Donne is an important figure in English literature. He was born in the year 1572. The exact date is not known. He was born in London, England. In 1572, England was ruled by a queen named Elizabeth I. This time was called the Elizabethan era. It was a time when many writers and thinkers became famous. Donne was born into a family that followed the Catholic religion. During this time, being Catholic in England was not easy. The official religion of England was Protestant. Catholics were often treated badly. They were sometimes punished or killed. Let me explain what Catholic and Protestant mean. In Europe, many years ago, most people followed the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church was led by the Pope in Rome. But some people did not agree with the Pope. They started a new form of Christianity called Protestantism. In England, the king made Protestantism the official religion. So, people who were Catholic faced problems. Donne's family was Catholic. This made his early life difficult. Donne's father was also named John Donne. He worked as an ironmonger. An ironmonger is a person who sells things made of iron. His father was successful and had money. Donne's mother was named Elizabeth Haywood. She came from a Catholic family too. Her family was connected to important people. One of her relatives was Sir Thomas More. Sir Thomas More was a famous man in England. He wrote books and worked for the king. But he was killed because he did not agree with the king's decisions. This shows that Donne's family had a history of facing troubles because of their beliefs. When Donne was only 4 years old, his father died. This happened in 1576. Losing a parent at such a young age was very hard. After his father's death, his mother took care of him. She married another man named John Syminges. John Syminges was a doctor. Donne's new stepfather was kind and helped the family. Donne had brothers and sisters too. He was the third of 6 children. Some of his siblings died when they were young. John Donne started going to school when he was young. His family wanted him to learn a lot. At the age of 11, he went to a university. This was not common because most children did not go to university so young. He studied at Hart Hall. Hart Hall was part of Oxford University. Oxford University is a very old and famous school in England. It is a place where people go to learn many subjects. Donne studied there for 3 years. He learned about subjects like literature, history, and religion. At that time, if you were Catholic, you had to sign a paper at university. This paper said you agreed with the Protestant religion. If you did not sign, you could not get a degree. Donne's family did not want him to sign this paper. They did not want him to give up his Catholic beliefs. So, he left Oxford without a degree. After leaving Oxford, Donne went to another university called Cambridge. Cambridge University is also in England. He studied there for some time. But again, he did not get a degree. The same problem happened. He did not want to sign the paper that said he was Protestant. This shows how important religion was in his life. It affected his education and his future. When Donne was about 16 years old, he moved to London. He started studying law. He studied at a place called Lincoln's Inn. Lincoln's Inn was a school for law in London. Donne did not become a lawyer, but he learned many things. Studying law helped him think clearly. It also helped him write better. It is evident from Biography of John Donne that he started to write poems while he was in London. Donne wrote many kinds of poems. At this time, he wrote poems about love and friendship. These poems were not very serious. They were playful and funny. He shared these poems with his friends. They liked his writing. But he did not publish these poems. When John Donne was about 20 years old, he began to travel. He joined a group of men who sailed on ships. These men were fighting for England against Spain. At that time, England and Spain were enemies. They had wars. Donne joined 2 journeys called expeditions. The first was in 1596. It was called the Cadiz expedition. Cadiz is a city in Spain. The English attacked this city. The second journey was in 1597. It was called the Azores expedition. The Azores are islands in the ocean. These journeys were dangerous. Donne was not a soldier, but he wanted to see the world. He also wanted to show he was brave. During these journeys, Donne wrote more poems. Some of these poems were about the sea and his travels. These experiences made him think about life and death. He saw how dangerous the world could be. This affected his writing later in life. After returning from these journeys, Donne got a job. He worked for a man named Sir Thomas Egerton. Sir Thomas Egerton was an important person in England. He worked for the Queen. Donne became his secretary. This job was good for Donne. It gave him money and a place to live. He lived in Sir Thomas Egerton's house in London. He met many important people. This helped him learn about politics and society. While working for Sir Thomas Egerton, John Donne fell in love with a girl named Anne More. Anne More was Sir Thomas Egerton's niece. Anne was only 16 years old when they met. Donne was 30 years old. Donne and Anne loved each other very much. But there was a problem. Anne's father did not want them to marry. Her father was named Sir George More. He was a rich and powerful man. He wanted Anne to marry someone else. Someone with more money and a better family. Despite this, Donne and Anne decided to marry in secret. They got married in 1601 without her father's permission. This caused a big problem. When Sir George More found out, he was very angry. He did not want his daughter to marry Donne. Sir George More had Donne sent to prison. Donne stayed in prison for a short time. He was released after proving the marriage was legal. Even after leaving prison, life was hard for Donne and Anne. Sir Thomas Egerton did not want Donne to work for him anymore. Donne lost his job. He had no money. Anne's father refused to help them. The couple moved to a small house outside London. They were poor. They had many children. Between 1602 and 1617, Anne gave birth to 12 children. Some of these children died when they were young. This was very sad for Donne and Anne. They loved their children very much. Biography of John Donne reveals that he continued to write during this time. He wrote more serious poems. These poems were about love, religion, and death. He also wrote letters to his friends. These letters were often about his struggles. Donne's life was full of struggles. He did not have enough money. He worried about his family. But he kept writing. His writing became deeper and more thoughtful. Now let us talk about Donne's religious life. Religion was very important to him. He was born Catholic, but when he was older, he became Protestant. There are many reasons why this happened. First, it was hard to be Catholic in England. Catholics were treated badly. Second, Donne wanted a better life. If he became Protestant, he could get better jobs. Third, he started to agree with Protestant ideas. In 1615, he became a priest in the Church of England. A priest is a person who leads religious services. The Church of England was the official Protestant church in England. Becoming a priest was a big change for Donne. He started writing religious poems and sermons. A sermon is a speech given in church. It teaches people about God and how to live a good life. Donne's sermons were very famous. People loved to listen to him. He spoke about life, death, and God in a way that made people think. His religious poems were also very deep. They were about his love for God and his fear of death. One famous poem is called Holy Sonnets. A sonnet is a type of poem with 14 lines. These poems show how Donne thought about his soul and his faith. The biography of John Donne includes his working as a priest for the rest of his life. He became very respected. In 1621, he became the dean of St. Paul's Cathedral. Donne worked there until he died. He gave many sermons at St. Paul's. People came from far away to hear him speak. Donne's wife, Anne, died in 1617. She was only 33 years old. She died after giving birth to their 12th child. The child did not survive either. This was a very sad time for Donne. He loved Anne very much. After her death, he became more serious about religion. He wrote many poems about grief. He also took care of his children alone. Donne's health was not good in his later years. He was often sick. In 1630, he became very ill. He knew he was going to die soon. Before his death, he wrote a famous sermon called Death's Duel. It was about death and how people should not fear it. He gave this sermon at St. Paul's Cathedral. People said it was like listening to an angel speak. Donne died on March 31, 1631 at the age of 59. He was buried at St. Paul's Cathedral. His statue is still in St. Paul's Cathedral today. It reminds people of Donne and his work. Now let us talk about why Donne is important in literature. Donne is called a metaphysical poet. Let me explain what this means. Metaphysical comes from two words, meta, which means beyond, and physical, which means things you can touch or see. So, metaphysical means beyond the physical world. Metaphysical poets wrote about big ideas like love, God, and the soul. They used clever ideas in their poems. For example, Donne compared two lovers to a compass in one of his poems. He said the two lovers were like the two legs of a compass. They were connected even when apart. This kind of clever idea is called a conceit. A conceit is a comparison that is unusual but makes you think. Donne's poems are divided into different types. First, there are his love poems. These are called songs and sonnets. They are about love between a man and a woman. Second, there are his religious poems. These are about his faith in God. Third, there are his satires. A satire is a poem that makes fun of people or society to bring reformation. Donne wrote satires to point out problems in the world. Fourth, there are his elegies. An elegy is a poem about sadness or death. Donne wrote elegies about people who died. Donne's writing style is very special. He used simple words, but his ideas were deep. He made people think about life in new ways. For example, in his poem The Flea, he talks about a flea biting two people. He says the flea mixes their blood. He uses this to say the two people are already united, so they should love each other. This is a clever and funny idea. His poems also have a lot of emotion. Donne's work was not very famous when he was alive. He did not publish many of his poems. After his death, people started reading his work more. In the 20th century, he became very famous. Writers like T.S. Eliot said Donne was one of the best poets. T.S. Eliot was a famous poet and critic. Eliot said Donne's poems were full of thought and feeling. This made more people study Donne. Take a look at this table of poems written by John Donne. Let me summarize Biography of John Donne for you. John Donne was born in 1572 in London. His family was Catholic. He went to Oxford and Cambridge but did not get a degree. He studied law and traveled on dangerous journeys. He worked for Sir Thomas Egerton. He married Anne More in secret. This caused problems, and he lost his job. He had many children with Anne. They were poor but loved each other. Anne died in 1617. Donne became a priest in 1615 and later the dean of St. Paul's Cathedral. He wrote poems and sermons. He died in 1631. His work became famous after his death. Dear students, I hope you now understand Biography of John Donne. Thank you for watching.